I bring you greetings from the great state of New Mexico. Thank you very much. It is very, very pleasing to be here. I had the last time I was at the podium of the pre-law conference was actually 2 years ago when I was a proud recipient of the Legacy Award that was presented to me by this body and the executive director. I want to talk a little bit about what I consider to be the feeder organization to the pre-law conference, and we'd like to probably stabilize that even more, and that is the Crump Law Camp. Anybody ever heard of the Crump Law Camp? The Crump Law Camp is a camp for high school students, and rising 8th graders to rising 9th graders who actually participate in the camp. It's a 2-week residential camp here on the campus of Howard University with rising 9th graders to rising 11th graders who actually participate in a mock trial, and during the 2 weeks they actually do about 3 hours a day of actually legal orientation, so to speak, and then it culminates in how to do research for the mock trial, and they all participated in the mock trial. And the winners we actually bring to the annual convention of the National Bar Association to actually for what we call the Final Four, because the final 2 on each side, the Final Four comes there and actually argue the case. And I got to tell you, matter of fact, one of my law campers was here yesterday. I don't know whether she's here today, but this is the 15th year that of the camp, and we actually will be celebrating our 15th anniversary on July the 16th at Howard University Law School. The important thing about that is that out of that camp, which were rising individuals who started as rising 9th graders and were rising 11th graders, we now have over 40 of them that are lawyers, actually, who've gone through the whole process. Ergo, we call it growing lawyers, and that was actually through October of this past year. We don't have the last figures from the bar passer, but we call it growing lawyers. The Wall Street Journal was nice enough to call them legal eagles in the article that they did on it. And of course, the National Law Journal had a piece on it and actually they call them eagles and eaglettes. And so we're very proud of that whole piece because it has become the centerpiece of the public service piece for the National Bar Association. And and I say that as no longer being the executive director, but the executive director emeritus, but also the historian, the official historian of the Bar Association, so I get a chance to keep using emeritus and executive director emeritus and legal historian. But if any of you are locally, we'd like to invite you to participate in that during, that's July 16th at Howard University Law School. Now, having said that, let me say to you, I come to you from a really different approach, because what happened is that before I went to law school, my original intent was to be a dentist. And after working in the lab for like 2 years under professor when I was in undergrad school, I decided that was too sedentary for me, and it was. So actually, I ended up going after undergrad school. I went to work at NASA as a computer operator, and that was during the heyday of the Space Administration, which was very important at that time, because they figured that because you worked at NASA, you knew all the astronauts. And so I never shall forget having the opportunity. Every time there was a flight, every time there was a space flight, there are 6 tracking stations for NASA around the world, and we, as being the computer people, we were there like 3 weeks ahead of time. So we got an opportunity to actually check out the whole neighborhood, and of course the bars, and to see what was going on in the whole town. And I never shall forget, I was on after Apollo 11. We were on the flight coming back from. They let us take the Cunard back. That's not your ordinary Carnival cruise ship. That is the apex of the cruise ship. So from Sydney, Australia to England. And during the course of that involvement, I happened to be the only one that looked like me on that whole, out of 4,000 people on the Cunard. And says, the little lady says to me, who was a 73-year-old who was on the Cunard, her and very wealthy lady out of Boston, or at least out of Massachusetts. I was out by the pool reading on the pool deck reading a book, and the lady says, "Young man, you." I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm from Texas, so we say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, you know." And he said, "What are you doing on here?" I say, "Well, when you called me, I was reading." And so consequently, she said, "Oh, you know, I mean, what are you doing on this?" So I explained to her, and she says to me, she said, "Well, good, you're going to be my escort at the captain's table tonight." I said, "Well, thank you very much, ma'am, but I say I really can't do that because I am for the captain's table on the upscale cruise ship. You have to wear a tuxedo." And I say, "I don't own a tuxedo." And she says, "Well, we will remedy that." And so she picks up the phone there by the poolside, and she calls the haberdasher on the ship, and she said, "I'm sending a young man down now to be fitted for a tuxedo for the night because he's my escort to the captain's table. Say, can you get it done in time? Because the dinner is at 8 o'clock. And evidently he said yes. And so she hung up. And she told me, "Go down about 7 o'clock. And then she remembered the thing. I guess since I was the only one on the ship that looked like me, she picks the phone back up and she says, "And by the way, he's black." And so that was my first, basically, understanding very vividly of diversity, and that happened to be the diversity in travel as it related to that. And so therefore, I looked at that in terms of that. So after a couple more of the trips was the best time of my life. I'm telling you, I was 23 years old. I was having big fun. And then I decided, I said, this is too much. I mean, the job at NASA was too good. And so therefore, I mean, I worked in Building 30. Building 30 at NASA Spacecraft Center in Houston is the building. That's mission control. And so you see everything that's going on there, you know, even the very negative stuff, because I had to witness actually two spaceships blow up on the platform. But the fact is that I knew that couldn't last. It was just so good. And so therefore, I decided to go to law school. And therefore, I went because they paid for my tuition the first year, and then after I found out I could make it, I quit because then I'd have to make a commitment to them for the next 4 years after I left. So anyway, that's my whole take on the whole process, and that's how I got to the whole thing. I've been fortunate in life because I have never had to apply for a job except after law school, and therefore what happened is that I came to Washington, and then I went back to Houston, and I was special assistant to the mayor of Houston. And I remember I was running one of my classmates from law school's campaign for state legislature. And the then president of the National Bar Association asked me, I asked him to introduce the individuals in the audience because he practiced law there in the court, and he was actually in Texas, judges can contribute to campaigns, unlike a lot of other places. And so he actually introduced all of the judges. And he asked that, after that, when I had introduced him and all the other people in the place, he asked me, we're looking for an executive director of the National Bar Association. How would you like to be the executive director of the Bar Association? I said, no, I don't think so. But 2 weeks later, he called me again, and I relented, you know, and so that, and then I spent the next 31 years at the National Bar Association as the executive director. Now, I say that to point out to you because what happened is that it was a good time, because what happened is that it kept me in touch with the law, and with a good overview of it, you know, I tell you, the first case I heard before the Supreme Court was U.S. versus Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. And therefore what happened is that that was the big thing, that you could go and listen to a lot of the cases that make the Bakke case, all of those cases. I had an opportunity to sit in the Supreme Court and hear. And what it did was, and I was just telling the former Bossa chair, she doesn't know that, but I drafted the original Constitution for Bossa with Jay Cooper, who was the founder. But the fact is that at Bossa meetings becomes really the training ground futuristically for you. When you look at the former Bossa chairs, and I think the speaker before in the panel before this one actually said something that was really very good in terms of individuals who are about to approach and determine what it is that they want to do in terms of the legal profession. Because he said, you know, you have to pick and choose the organizations that you join, because there's so many of them, and there's so many that takes up all your time. But you also have to be committed to the ones that you decide to participate in. And that is very important in terms of the whole process. Because what you want to do is that you want to make sure that the time that you're using, that you could be doing something else, is that has a focus on it for you. And one of the things I used to ask a lot of the Bossa students who used to come to see me a lot when I was the exec of the bar, I would always ask them, what is your 3, 5, 7, and 10-year plan? And of course, most people have never thought about that. But what happens is that if you focus on that, what happens is you won't get distracted, because you will sit down and point out, this is where I want to be in 3 years, this is where I want to be in 5 years, this is where I want to be in 7 years, this is where I want to be in 10 years. And therefore what happened is that there are so many resources that, and what I found is that lawyers actually have a tendency to be very supportive of one another. I mean, they can be cantankerous, we know that, but the fact is that they be very supportive of one another. So you can almost pick up any phone at any point in time and call a lawyer, and they recognize that you're a student, and they'll get back to you, because they realize they have been there before. And therefore what happened is, and I always say to a lot of the young people, take the time to actually cultivate a relationship with a number of them. And I was listening to the speaker before me, and I say, my God, he must have been looking over my shoulder, because a lot of the things that he was saying is things that I have lived through in terms of the whole piece. But the one thing I guess I want to say to you is that when you get out here, you got to really believe in yourself, because what happened is that don't get up in the morning preparing yourself for acceptance by other people, because what's going to happen is by the end of the day, they will change the rules on you. And so be aware of that, because you can kind of feel that at some point. And you realize that what happened is that it is very good to say, as I said a long time ago when I was sitting on the board of Sheraton Hotels, was the fact, I told one of the guys who was sitting around the table for me, he was talking about a lot of things they wanted to implement in the hotels. I said, don't homogenize America. It's not the same. It's a diverse crowd. Everybody don't want the same thing. Like, everybody do not want to go up to the concierge level at 5 o'clock because they got discounted bourbon. And I say, so therefore what happened is that let the individuals be them, give them a choice if that's what they want to do, but don't have that all kind of a none kind of process. And I think that that's one of the things that you look at in terms of it. And we hope that by the time since none of you in here got a chance to participate in the Crump Law Camp, we think that what we can do with the law camp is prepare them at an early stage to make sure that they don't face all of the mind-blowing kind of things that seem that way anyway, at a later age and get it at a very much an earlier age of it. And I'm very proud of some of the individuals who actually come out of the law camp, because some of them have, we got people who come out of law camp who's already been elected to public office. I have an Indian, one of the Native American Indian friends who came through the camp, actually is the chief tribal council at a Navajo reservation in Arizona. And there are a lot of people who come through. One little lady who came out of Alaska is actually now in the state legislature of Alaska. And it only seemed like yesterday, because we're only 15 years old, and these were less than 5 or 6 years ago, and they've already gone through the process and are ready to take on all the chores of the world, I call it. But the fact is that I think that it's programs like this will give you an opportunity, as they say, open your eyes to what the challenges are that you're going to be facing, and what kinds of study habits and what kind of process of your skills that you need to acquire. But I think most importantly, what really happens is that as we say to the individuals in the orientation of the Crump Law Camp, what we want to make sure we do is that, because this is a pipeline, but we have to get them before they get a record. And so therefore, and that was the whole purpose of making it as early as the rising ninth graders, because that's another chore out there. And of course, the thing of it is that what I have, me and my former dean were talking one time, and I said, the question really becomes: is the law profession, is it a profession, or is it just like plumbing and electricians? Because what happens is people have to worry sometimes, say, is this a profession, or is this just a skill set that I need to develop, and it is just a way to earn a living? And of course, the other caveat will be is that I'm a little disappointed in law schools, because I think that what happened is that if you take higher education, including universities, including law school, it is the only segment of this whole economy that actually had double and triple the inflation route in terms of increase in the cost of going to school, because they have gone up almost every year for the last 10 to 15 years. The cost of tuition has exceeded what the inflation rate is, and that's not kosher. Something's wrong with that problem, because what happened is, I know what it is basically capital improvements, because you could do capital improvement if you're a state institution, and they can, the legislature will pay for the capital improvement, because that's what puts all of their buddies who contribute to their campaigns to work and give them jobs as contractors. But you got to figure that the cost of a capital improved building is 15 to 20% operating cost to maintain it. And so that has to be passed on to the back of the students. And that's why the real problem is with the tuition creep, so to speak, because as it now is, the tuition shock as it is. So I think those are some of the concerns. I point those out there because what happened is the professor types can give you all of the kind of approaches that you need to be successful in that. I look at it from the whole process is that, because I'm still confused in my own mind, Dean Bellamy. I'm still confused in my own mind is why in law school there is no teaching of a business plan for the practice of law. There's no teaching of that in law school, and as a matter of fact, nothing related to economic will get you any continuing legal education credits with the state bars. And when I was exec, I realized that the biggest problem that lawyers had, especially not big firm lawyers, but small firm lawyers, the biggest problems they had were two. One was the economic things related to how you manage the whole law firm in terms of trust accounts and everything else. The other piece the number one and two reasons for sanctions by the state bar were basically related to economic consideration and communications with the client. And those are two things really never taught I mean, that's some of the junk pieces that you can pick it up with. But neither one of those gives you credit on the CLE for in the state bar. So anyway, I throw those out at you so that you can get a feel for what it's like out here in the world, because there's life after law school too. And therefore, what happened is that I wish all of you well, and and thank you for your endurance in terms of my time and your time, and also for listening to my pitch for the Crump Law Camp. Thank you very much.